a conscious pioneer, a logic general, a reason brigadier. More bullshit from the pulpit. Meet me in the comment section and you get schooled, bitch. The Godless engineer.
So,
Sure.
James, how are you doing tonight?
Not bad. How are you doing?
Oh yeah, been pretty good. We got all this ice going around in Alabama, but uh, usually happens around this time of year. So what are you going to be
Yep.
talking about at the Myth Information Conference?
My presentation is called Defending Reason from Idiots and Frauds. So we're going to talk about argumentation and debate with theologians, with creationists, and some strategies and some things to look out for. I mean, in a debate, having the truth on your side doesn't mean you're going to win. And when I say win, win in the eyes of the audience members. So we're going to talk about that and sharpening those debating skills. We're going to talk about a common question in these debates. How do you know what is true? Often that is brought in, and everybody should be able to answer that question intelligently. I'm going to be tearing down this concept of absolute truth from God. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on C.S. Lewis, who a lot of theologians think is genius. When you look at his work, you actually look at a playbook that today's theologians use as far as his arguments. I'm going to talk about a statement that Kevin Sorbo made about science, saying that there was an atheist perspective and a Christian perspective, and obviously that's false. Science doesn't care less what religion or non-religion you are, so we'll talk about that. Talk about that debate with Bill Nye and Ken Ham last year. Talk about the things that Bill Nye did right, and he did a lot of things right. And I'm going to call out Ken Ham because he used an argument that was debunked over 20 years ago on his own website. So I'm going to call him out on that. And then we're going to talk about my good friend Glenn Beck and his love affair with Moses. And as you know, there are politicians trying to push Moses as the first founding father, and the constant rhetoric of how this is a Judeo-Christian country. So we'll spend some time on that as well. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and the idea is just to sharpen the weapons and increase skills as far as debating and arguing.
Awesome. Are you going to go through any kind of logical fallacies or anything like that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of discussion on that. I don't want to get into that too much because there's such a long list of logical fallacies, and now we said that's something the theologians Christianists are saying. They're using it. Obviously, they're not using it with any kind of integrity, but now often I've noticed when you see them losing and getting backed up into a corner, you'll just see them blurt out something. Oh, that's an argument from ignorance. Oh, that's an argument for whatever. So they blurt out just a name of a logical fallacy. Doesn't have anything behind it, but now you see that's what they're resorting to. So as far as that, I guess the only one I'm going to talk about is Gish Gallop, because that's something that Ken Ham does that has this one instance of this argument that was debunked over 20 years ago on his own website. So. But aside from the Gish Gallop, I don't plan on going through a whole bunch of logical fallacies as part of this.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. It's just, one of the series that I'm running on my channel is logical fallacies. I'm trying to go through and kind of
Yep.
explain them because, a lot of people, they don't really understand how to either use them correctly or they don't really know about them in general. Like they know about the big ones like ad hominem and all this other stuff, but I've been trying to, I guess, move into more of an educational and activist kind of channel instead of a loud atheist kind of deal.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Learning those is always good, and not just these debates, but for any debates. So getting to know these, absolutely. Mine's going to be more focused on specific examples, this is what theologians commonly come up with. This is what creationists commonly come up with, such as the absolute truth comes from God, and addressing some specific situations.
Well, yeah, actually, that kind of goes well into my next question here is, in your talk, you're going to be talking about pretty much the dissemination of misinformation. And I'm just wondering if you could give us maybe one example of that occurring, like in our current social environment.
In our current social environment, we have an attack on the word secular, which is insane because the secular foundation is what made our country unique. It's what makes our country special. But we're seeing that word specifically, secular, under attack, and of course by the people who want to turn this into a Christian theocracy. And it seems to be based on, if you repeat a lie often enough, somehow you can make it true. So I guess that's an example of misinformation. Secular means fairness. Secular means everybody's treated fairly, no matter what religion you are, or what religion, or if you're not religious. It means no persecution or special privileges based on faith. That is a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. That's something that took a lot of human progress in order to create. And obviously we have people trying to take that away, tear it down, and demonize it, which is terrifying. So that's definitely a battle that's going on.
And to kind of play off of that a little bit, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Huckabee, but recently
Yes.
in an interview, he's spouted something about a secular theocracy. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on this whole idea about a secular theocracy?
Well, obviously, secular is the opposite of theocracy. There's no persecution and no special privileges based on faith, which means one law, everybody treated equally under the law. One law for everybody. You, me, everybody get treated the same, which is how justice is supposed to work. So obviously it's a ridiculous statement. Mike Huckabee at CPAC last year made a statement that if the United States didn't burn, God would Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. Now he made this statement saying somebody else made this statement, but he brought it up and he didn't say anything against it. So it was basically an endorsement. So we have a guy running for president who thinks the United States deserves to burn. Yeah, this guy is scary. And he's also one of the idiots that said when we took God out of schools, and then he's talking about the Supreme Court ruling, and I think it was 1960 something, that you couldn't force kids, in prayer. Now we have gun violence. Never mind all the horrible things that happened before that. Never mind this plague that happened in the 1900s and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Never mind all these disasters. We have these people making these statements like that, and this is a real dangerous guy. I haven't heard too much of him with the president and the last straw poll or whatever they have. I haven't really mentioned in the last CPAC, so hopefully he's just going to go away. But yeah, guys like him, guys like Rick Santorum, pretty scary stuff coming out of the Republican Party.
Well, to kind of jump across the aisle to, I guess, a more libertarian, Rand Paul recently was spouting some pretty dumbass stuff about vaccines, talking about how,
Yeah.
he had friends whose children got profound mental disorders after getting vaccinated. What do you think about politicians in these high levels that are disseminating all this bad information to people?
Well, first off, you could always make an I know this guy argument. That's not science. I mean, exercise and eat healthy. Oh, I know this guy that was healthy and he had a car accident. Well, but you got to look at the overall statistics. Overall statistics, you take care of yourself, you're going to have a better life. Anybody can come up with this stuff, Oh, well, I know this guy that smoked every day of his life and he lived to 88. Well, yeah, but it's not science. You have to look at the statistics. So for him to come up with something like that, saying, oh, I know this person, and as soon as they had their shot, something happened or whatever, it's so completely irresponsible. Anybody can do that. You have to look at the statistics, and Penn and Teller had a real good thing with that, where they're throwing the pins and knocking them down, and it's like you put up the shield, that's vaccines. Okay, the shield didn't cover anything, so they'd throw the ball and some things would get knocked down, but it didn't have it. There was a heck of a lot more of these pins getting knocked down. So you have to look at the overall statistics, and in general, yes, it helps quite a bit. And then, of course, with vaccines, a lot of people they don't remember. They don't remember all these horrible diseases. So in fighting the anti-vaccine movement, I've seen a lot of pictures being shared. Hey, this is the scary crap that used to go on, where you see, kids in these giant machines, with smallpox. Obviously, FDR suffered from polio, which was horrible. So people can't forget the past and ignore all the fantastic things that have been done because of vaccines, and then want that bad stuff to come again, which was what we've seen. We've seen some of these diseases coming back because of this anti-vaccine nonsense. But,
Yeah, I actually I had a comment thrown my way from a friend. He screen capped it, and it was somebody who basically said, "How many kids have gotten measles in the past 100 years? None. How many kids have died from the vaccine for measles?" And she said a number like 100, and it's just like, yeah. You know why they didn't die from measles? Because people were vaccinated. And
yep.
it's just kind of like people completely forget about a whole bunch of stuff. When they go to criticize things like that, and it seems like the vaccines and another subject like guns seems to be a very like hot topic for some reason. Like you'll just get some of the most vile vitriol thrown your way, if you say anything. Like Jimmy Kimmel recently learned that, because he put together that PSA with all the doctors that kind of announced it in a funny way that yes, vaccines, they work. All that polio you didn't get
Yeah.
was one of the things they said. But I'm kind of curious. And this is kind of a little bit off subject, but do you see like us moving towards more of a I guess a reduction in all this anti-vax stuff, or do you think that it's just going to get worse?
That's a good question. I hope we see a reduction. I mean, when Scott Walker was in England and he refused to answer a question on evolution, it's scary. It seems like we're going backwards. During the Super Bowl, there's the commercial from that cruise company that had a clip from John F. Kennedy talking about why we're attracted to the sea. Well, maybe it's because we evolved from the sea, and there's salt in the sea, like there's salt in our blood and salt in our tears. And it was this fantastic statement by our president over 50 years ago. And over 50 years ago, and over 50 years later, we have a presidential contender that says, oh no, we shouldn't talk about evolution. I mean, it's scary. It seems like we're going backward. It seems like Carl Sagan's fear is coming true, where everybody's reliant on science and technology, but everybody's getting ignorant of science and technology. And now the knowledge of science and technology is just going to this small group of people. and that small group of people is going to have the power.
Yeah, interesting thing about the cruise line ad. I actually watched it, and the only reason why I watched it was because it actually caused a whole big shitstorm on Twitter. With because that's apparently where the idiots go to really release their frustrations. But they had a bunch of people that were just slinging a whole bunch of vitriol because the cruise lines were basically putting out there that they support evolution, and so of course that hurt Christian sensibilities. But what's really funny is the fact that there was that little bit with the cruise line, but at the very end of Katy Perry's like Super Bowl halftime thing, she of course was like, "Oh yes, praise God," or "Thank you God," or something like that. And nobody blew up over that. If you were to take the Christians and apply their reaction to the whole cruise line thing to with atheists and the whole thanking God thing, I mean, nobody said anything about that, but yet Christians they get all hurt over somebody saying that they believe in evolution. Um,
And the thing is, John F. Kennedy was a Catholic. And he made the greatest speech on the separation of church and state ever made. The man was a Catholic. So what is happening to our country?
Yeah, I have no idea. It really does seem like we're going backwards, especially with the LGBT stuff that's going on down here in Alabama. I don't know if you're aware, but they actually
Yeah,
passed through one of the houses today something that says basically that the probate judges don't have to issue licenses, like marriage licenses, if they don't want to. Like if it
right.
offends their religious sensibilities, then they have the freedom to not issue a marriage license, which seems to be in direct conflict with federal law at this point. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, it's ridiculous, and constantly we're seeing religious privilege under the disguise of religious freedom. And this can be traced back to religious freedom restaurant or whatever it was called. And I think one of the first cases was this group of Native Americans that only belonged to the Native American church or something, and allowing them to smoke peyote as part of their ceremony. And of course, people are thinking, oh, well, Native Americans, yeah, it's already tough history there. My God, they want to smoke peyote as part of this ritual. Well, we need to allow that. But as soon as you do that, you now don't have a single law of the land. Now it's illegal for me to smoke that. It's illegal for you to smoke that. But for another individual who happens not only to be Native American, but specific with this one specific Native American church, well, then it's legal for them. So now we're getting into this, everybody's equal under the law, but some people are more equal than others. And it should have never happened. And now that opens the door. And as soon as you do that, everybody lines up for a handout.
Sorry.
Bless you. I still say bless you.
Yeah.
Have it.
I mean, pretty much down here in the South, bless you is like standard response. um,
Yeah, I'm trying to get used to saying Gesundheit, but
yeah, that's actually what we ended up doing. We say Gesundheit. Um, well, speaking of all these fantastical myths that people believe in, why do you think that they hold on so hard to these beliefs?
the only conclusion I've been able to come to, and I've spent a great amount of time thinking of this, is insanity. Because when it comes to other aspects of their life, they're able to go for a walk and find their way back home. They're able to go to the grocery store, pay money, get change. So in all other aspects, they're functional. Hey, some of them, they're lawyers, some are engineers, some whatever in their profession. They're trustworthy, competent, But when it comes to religious beliefs, anybody that believes that the words of the Bible are true is suffering from insanity. They've abandoned reason for madness. And of course, we get blamed just for pointing out what's in the Bible. Don't blame us. We didn't write it. We're just pointing some stuff out that's in there that you might want to think about. Some stuff that's pretty insane, some stuff that's pretty hateful, some stuff that's pretty horrible. But it's like, how can anybody believe this stuff?
Yeah,
Crazy. I mean,
I was just gonna say that I can't believe some of the things that people believe in because, like, just a little bit of anecdotal evidence, I guess. My dad had to have heart surgery, and of course he asked for prayers, and then God was so gracious that he made it a quadruple bypass that he had to get, and then he was even more gracious and just downgraded it to a triple bypass after another call for prayers. So yeah, I don't understand why people hold on to these beliefs. Like they just totally turn their heads on it, and they even make up excuses. But a good point to bring up though is this group of that we're labeling the nuns. These are people that are coming out of
yeah.
structured religion and into unstructured religion. Do you think that group is a group that's kind of like ready to shuck those beliefs, and by pointing out all of these things in the Bible that they probably weren't coached to know while in structured religion, you think that could jar some of them out, into a more secular mindset?
You certainly hope so, and I would think so. And hopefully, a lot of them become active in a debate, in a discussion. They're not just saying, "Well, I'm none, and I don't want to talk about it with either theists or atheists." But yeah, I've seen that's the trend. Obviously, it's an exciting trend. I think it's only a good thing, and the internet has to have a big part of that. With the internet communities, because I mean, it used to be, if you were an atheist, you were completely isolated. You went to the library, you're not going to find any material. You're not going to find probably any neighbors that share your beliefs. You're completely isolated. But now with the World Wide Web, there's so many sources. There's so many communities that people aren't alone anymore. So that had to have caused an increase and people being secular. And unfortunately, I guess the word atheist still has, it's still been demonized. It was demonized in the 50s. It was associated with communism, and I think that's still something we're fighting, even though obviously the word doesn't mean communist. All it means is now being defined as a lack of belief in gods. So yeah, they're calling themselves the nuns. Maybe they don't want to be involved with discussion and not say I'm an theist or Christian or atheist. But it would be nice if a big chunk of those can adopt the atheist label, because when you look at the percentages, religious people like to point out, oh, atheists, that's just like 3 to 5%. Well, if you look at the definition just being lack of belief in God, then obviously it's a lot bigger than that. But we need more people, I think, taking that label.
Yeah, I agree. And here in the recent past, there was actually a poll or something where, atheists were apparently more distrustful, or people were less trustful of atheists than rapists. So that's just kind of an indicator as to how much, the general population hates atheists.
Right. Because if we don't believe in this crazy, hateful stuff, where do we get our moral barometer? I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, you look at Moses. Right after thou shalt not kill, he's slaughtering his own people for worshiping a golden calf. And since we don't believe in that, our morality is being questioned. It is insane.
Well, one point that I've brought up many times has been the fact that, religions, well, specifically Christianity, their morality has actually changed, but yet we, we're seeing Christians nowadays saying that it's an unchanging morality. But, if you really take an honest look at our past, like just three big movements to mention has been, slavery, women's suffrage, women's rights in general, and then the LGBT community. If you really think about it, there hasn't been like religious people that are like leading the way in that. It's always been like society in general that kind of steers away from the
Right.
religious aspect of it. But then the religious come back in behind us and say, "Oh no, we did that." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the hypocrisy. I mean, you're talking about how your father had surgery, and something good happens. It's because of the prayers. God is the ultimate politician, because anything bad happens, he has immunity. Anything good questions, anything good happens, he gets credit. It's the analogy that a bridge collapses, 100 cars, 100 drivers fall to their death. That was not God. A school bus on the edge of the collapse didn't fall in. That was God. God saved those kids. And this is what we hear over and over and over again, this false analogy. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, during the tornadoes a couple years ago that were really kind of wreaking havoc on the U.S. I believe I remember like one student or one class or something like that was not hit by the tornado, and so they survived. But then it's kind of like, well, then that means just everybody else that died in it were just God was like, oh, I'm sorry, slipped. I'm all thumbs today. Kind of
Right.
deal. Uh,
You also,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
you also had a situation where two schools were hit. One of them had a underground tornado shelter or sub tornado shelter. The other was an older school and didn't. And the one that didn't have that tornado shelter, some kids died. What did prayer have to do with it? Is it because at one school they were praying harder than the others? No, it's because one school was more modern. It prepared, it had the underground shelter, and that was the difference. One of my favorite debates with David Silverman is he was on Fox News, and it was preparation versus prayer. And obviously, preparation is everything. After the preparation is done, you want to pray, you want to play video games, whatever. Just make sure the preparation is done. Generators, flashlights, food, what have you. Just make sure you do the preparation, because that's what's going to save you.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, prayer worked. All you'd have to do is pray, and then all of that stuff would be set up, and I guess then you could pray some more. I don't know. Um,
Yep.
uh, there's been a lot of times where I have stated how, even the most minute irrational beliefs that other people think are not harmful can actually be very dangerous. Do you think that there's any like irrational belief that isn't dangerous?
Irrational beliefs that aren't dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, well, I suppose. I mean, you kind of look at the fact that most Christians and most Muslims are good people. Of course, we always point out that's because they don't follow the book they claim allegiance to. But looking at history, there's certainly cases where religious people have done the right thing, even though their beliefs were irrational. But because of their interpretation, and I think it comes to somebody who's innately good, well, they're just going to follow the good things and ignore the rest. So they're going to be good people. And even if they weren't religious, even if they were another religion, they'd pretty much be acting who they are. So I guess in cases like that, you can argue, I mean, the best we can hope for is moderate. We're not going to remove religion from this world. The best we can do is for people to have a light, flexible interpretation. And we're not going to get rid of all the irrational beliefs.
Yeah, I'm a pretty firm believer in the fact that we're even if we were to completely get rid of Christianity, something else is going to pop up because I think it's kind of part of human nature a little bit to believe in something that's unbelievable. Because I mean I guess that's the only way that I can rationalize some of these people that are totally disregarding science, disregarding what they see with their own eyes, and instead they're going with something that of course appeases their own perception, I guess.
Yep. Just seeing what they want to see.
Yeah. Is there any certain set of beliefs that you feel is more dangerous than the others?
Well, obviously, what we have going on in the world with radical Islam is the most dangerous threat that we face right now. I mean, we can talk about the scary stuff we have going on in this country with attacks on science and people that want to make this a Christian theocracy. But if you look, we see that atheist that was just butchered in Bangladesh, being imprisoned in Egypt, Saudi Arabia. We look at these horrible situations happening in these Islamist theocracies. I mean, by far, that is the greatest, the strict interpretation of Sharia law being forced down the throats of the masses by these few that are these arrogant, uptight, self-righteous, fanatical people. It's just the most horrible thing, I think, happening in the world right now.
Yeah, I agree completely because I mean, if you look at pictures of people from those countries, like back during the '60s and the '70s, I mean, it
Yeah.
looks a whole lot more progressive back in those times. But then you fast forward to current days, and it just seems like Sharia law and really just fundamental Islam has just completely taken over there. There's a lot of people that say, and this might be getting a little too far out of your scope, but some people have been claiming that the like ISIS and the radical Muslims are not actually Muslim. Like that's a pretty big argument, and I'm just kind of wondering what are your thoughts on that particular argument?
Well, it's ridiculous, and I was just disappointed when President Obama made that statement. And even recently there was a Muslim on one of those channels saying, "Yeah, that stuff is in the Quran." It is in the Quran. I mean, could we just stop lying? Could we just stop lying? A quick Google search will show you these horrible passages that are in the Quran. I did a review of the Quran, just the first book, the first 2 pages. In the first 2 pages, there's already a threat of violence for non-believers. You can't get 2 pages into that book. And actually, I think it's probably even worse than the Bible. I mean, the Bible has horrible things in it, but the Bible kind of suffers from attention deficit disorder because that book just goes all over the place. But as far as hatred against non-believers, as far as threats of violence, or calling names, that seems to be pretty consistent within the Quran. And the passages are in there. So no matter how much President Obama denies it or anybody denies it, unless you're going to edit the book the passages are in there. They're not going away.
Yeah, and I've heard many a moderate Muslims claim that these horrible passages aren't in the Quran or whatnot, and that's just completely disingenuous on their part. And I really don't think that's
Right.
the way to go and deny the fundamentalists, because I mean, like, the Christians over here in America have the WBC and other people like them, and I don't really see them like being disingenuous about them being Christian. I know that there are people out there that probably do say, well, no, they're not Christian, but of course, along with the the fundamentalist Muslim aspect and this aspect, it just seems like a big no true Scotsman fallacy to me.
Right. And yeah, and in the Bible, I mean, you talk about slavery, and when we came out of slavery, and Christians saying, "Oh yeah, that was us." Okay, well, was that in the Bible? Because the Bible says slavery is okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of people try to. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, one common argument that I've heard as far as the slavery issue goes and other horrible things that are in the Old Testament is that they actually break them up into like three different sets of laws, and it just seems like they're continuing to move the goalpost.
Continuing to leave the Bible.
Yeah.
And as you know, we have a lot of people saying, well, this is a Christian country because Thomas Jefferson said, endowed by our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, well, are you saying that Thomas Jefferson was a divine prophet? Because if you're saying that's Christianity, please point out in the Bible where it says people have the rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You will not find that in the Bible. The only thing you'll find in the Bible is people have the right to worship the God of Moses or be killed and be burned forever. That's what right you have in the Bible. But it's just like, yeah, anything good, we're going to take that. Anything good happens. Oh, yeah, that's Christianity. it's just disingenuous. Point out where it is in the Bible, or don't claim it's yours.
Yeah, in one particular debate between David Silverman and another guy about this very subject, the only real evidence that he had was the date on the, I think it was either Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, but he basically said in the year of our Lord, and apparently that
Yeah.
makes our nation a Christian nation. Um, and he also tried to pull this whole thing with the Treaty of Tripoli, talking about the different revisions and whatnot to it, and how one revision didn't have the whole "we're not a Christian nation" on it, and it's just like, okay, well, which one got ratified? Like, which one was actually signed into law? And it just seems like, like we've been talking about this whole time, that they just totally disregard like facts, like just cold hard facts, and it's just sad.
Look at the fact that the First Amendment is in direct contradiction to the First Commandment. They're completely separate. You can have any God you want, any religion you want, versus you will only have the God of Abraham. How can anyone argue that those are the same thing?
Well, interesting point on the First Amendment is, a lot of Christian nowadays are reading the First Amendment as to say that, it protects religious liberty, well, I guess more specifically Christian religion, and
Right.
doesn't really extend that to other religions or whatnot. What do you think about this misconception that's really being portrayed?
It's so arrogant. It's so bigoted. I mean, it's so laughably bigoted that you have to think, do these people realize what they sound like when they're making these statements? And the thing is, and I believe John F. Kennedy mentioned this in a speech on separation of church and state. Well, with John F. Kennedy, what he was battling with was coming in as a Catholic. And he was being attacked for being a Catholic, with people saying, oh, that the Pope is going to run the White House. And so in that speech about separation of church and state, he addresses this. But this is something that Penn Jillette mentions when he talked about the 2012 election. Christianity used to be divided. It wasn't this one umbrella term that we have now. And actually, it would be better if it was divided like it was. Because then when you have these people saying, oh, this is only Christian rights, it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's say you get your way and it becomes Christian rights. Well, now you have it's Catholic, or it's Mormon, or it's evangelical. Now you're going to have these wars within it, which of course is why the best thing is to be secular, where no religious belief gets special privilege or gets persecuted. Otherwise, it'll never end. I mean, you look at with these Islamic theocracies. Well, that's not enough that it's an Islamic theocracy, because you have Sunnis, and you have Shiites. So you still have this division of rights going on, and it never ends. Because the extremists from one or the other will take over, and then the other group that's not in power, they're going to see their rights diminished.
Yeah, and speaking of this subject in general, there's been many states here recently that have tried to make Christianity like their state religion. I mean, what are your thoughts on their attempts at doing that?
It's so arrogant. I mean, don't they even give any thought to the Hindus that are in their state, the Jews, the Muslims? I mean, just the people of different religions in their state, and what that means to them to say, oh, this is a Christian state. It's just so arrogant. It's so exclusive, bigoted. It's like, what is the matter with these people? I mean, don't they have any thought of people? And apparently they don't. It's just unbelievably arrogant. And I can't imagine if, there was a particular state that was mostly non-believers, that anybody would say, oh, you know what, let's declare this an atheist state. It's preposterous. We have a secular country, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing. Let's keep it. Let's not screw that up.
Yeah, and another sad thing is that a lot of politicians and just people in the public light are really equating secularism with atheism or atheists, just because we tend to be secular, of course, and so you've got this whole I guess branding of being secular is bad, because then you're not subscribing to a higher power or anything like that. But there's a lot of Christians out there that are very secularly minded when it comes to government. Just in that state that is trying to make Christianity a state religion, there's a Christian Republican on the Senate there that says that he wants to unite people under freedom and not divide them under religion. So I mean,
Right.
it seems like there are more, I guess, level-headed Christians that are beginning to really speak out. Do you think that that's going to increase, or what do you think about that?
I hope it increases, and atheists do not want to play into that, because secular should not be considered an atheist term. So when you look up the definition of secular in Google, you should not be saying a definition saying, hey, this is an atheist belief. Same thing with humanism. So we need to make sure that we keep any of that out of the definitions of those terms. Because absolutely, John F. Kennedy was a Catholic. Absolutely, he was a secularist. Most brilliant speech ever made on the separation of church and state. And a humanist, you can say that a lot of scientists in the past, we talked about vaccines, that came up with these vaccines, they were Christian. But obviously they believed that humans were responsible for human destiny. So you have someone with a Christian faith working on a vaccine because he knows through human hands he can help people. And yeah, you can say that that's a humanist. So we definitely want to make those terms secular, and when we talk about them, we don't want to talk about them like, oh yeah, this is an atheist term, this is an atheist belief. I mean, for atheists, atheist really isn't a stance on morality. So a lot of atheists, their stance on morality, secular humanism, that's a stance on morality. So that's something a lot of atheists turn to. But it should never be considered exclusive to atheists. And that's definitely not what we want to promote.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that the politicians and whatnot that are really trying to equate secularism with atheism are just going to be. I would hope that enough people are going to start speaking up to where they're just going to stop doing that in general, because it really is a stupid thing to say that secularism is atheism. Um,
Yeah.
but speaking of secularism, let's talk about this whole idea that Moses was a founding father, of our
Yeah.
country. Um, I really, it's like every time I grasp the concept of how they perceive it, I immediately lose it because it just doesn't make sense. What are your thoughts on it?
It makes absolutely no sense at all. I mean, when you look at the Ten Commandments, there's three good things that come out of that you hear over and over again. Don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. Don't kill being the big one. But then right after reading this, Moses kills his own people. Why? Because they are worshiping a golden calf. They weren't worshiping his God. Did they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Did they have freedom of speech? Did they have freedom of religion? No, they had the right to be slaughtered for not worshiping his God. After that, he's slaughtering the Midianites because Midianite women seduced Israeli men on Mount Peor into participating in rituals to a different god. So Moses goes to war per God's order, kills all the soldiers, all the civilians are brought to him. The men too old to fight, the boys too young, the women, mothers, grandmothers. What does Moses do? He orders them to be slaughtered. Did they have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Did they have the right of freedom of speech? Did they have the right of freedom of religion? I mean, it is laughable. And as you probably know, Christian Bale, who researched Moses for the role in Exodus, realized, my gosh, this guy's a terrorist. Christian Bale was right. The guy was, when you look at the horrible things that ISIS is doing, look what Moses did. I mean, slaughtering people, except for the virgins. The soldiers were allowed to keep them, so they were enslaved. Everybody else was slaughtered. How could you possibly say that if that was the foundation, if that was the moral and ethical foundation of the United States of America, we wouldn't be fighting ISIS, we'd be joining them. ISIS is Moses. Moses is ISIS.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah, and that really does get my thoughts working because you laid out this picture of Moses going into and just blatantly killing all of these innocent people, and ISIS is pretty much doing the same thing. Because they're going in and they're killing people. Like I know there's been several videos on the internet where they're just executing kids, kids that can't do anything, but yet they're executing them. And for what reason? yeah, and they always say Allahu Akbar, right? And so it just seems like they're willfully blind to their own religion, and they're willfully, blocking out all of that crap because it happened like so long ago and it's not happening now, which also kind of begs the question why they don't realize that their morality changes.
Yeah,
uh,
it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's,
Well,
let,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it was fantastic talking to you, James, and I can't wait to meet
Yeah.
you up in Milwaukee for the conference. I hope you'll sit down with me either before or after your talk, or sometime during that day, because I'm going to be streaming live while it's
Yeah.
going on. So I hope you'll join me on camera to just kind of answer a few questions there, I guess. Um, um,
Absolutely.
awesome. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you would really like to promote, as far as what you're doing or any places that you're going?
Real focus right now is with information that you just talked about on April 25th. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be the opening act with guys like Hemant Mehta and Dr. Rick. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've had a lot of time to prepare, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, looking forward to meeting you there in person, and appreciate the work you're doing, and that you're going to be doing there, doing the live streaming. So that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your endorsement there. On with YouTube and their algorithm and whatnot, my videos haven't really been getting a lot of views, but that's just because of how small the channel is and whatnot right now. Um, But I did forget to ask you one question that I've been really meaning to ask is what's your position on a historical Jesus?
On historical Jesus, really, there's two options. Either he's a semi myth or he's all myth. And I kind of lean towards the position of semi myth because when you look at some of the stories about him, they're real ordinary. I kind of look at Carl Sagan's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but when you look at a story where he left his parents and they were looking for him, and then he found him speaking to some religious leaders, that's pretty ordinary. When you look at stories where he says, I'm the son of God, and people don't believe him, including his own brother, well, that's pretty ordinary, but that also conflicts with some of these other stories. Like, for example, if he was born of a virgin, and these three wise men came and said, this is the chosen one, and gave him gold and stuff, if that happened, and then later on he said, I'm the son of God, why would people not believe him? Everybody would be like, yeah, we know. So obviously there's serious inconsistencies. Obviously a heck of a lot of it was myth. If he did exist, and you were to go back in time and talk to his mother and ask her about the virgin birth, she would have no idea what you were talking about. But yeah, I kind of lean towards the semi-myth, but I'll be interested to see what Dr. Richard Carrier has to say at the Myth Conference.
Yeah, I can't wait for his talk either. I've been listening to a lot of his stuff as well as reading his books and reading a whole lot of other books. And I actually haven't picked up your book yet, but I have like a whole long list of books that I'm trying to work through. Um, but anyways, I appreciate you answering that question for me before we head out, and I really appreciate you coming on and letting me have this interview with you and talk about what you're pretty much talking about at the conference. Um, and
Great, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And as for all of you out there that are watching, I hope you have a good day, night, weekend, whatever, whenever you're watching this. And as always, don't forget to think skeptically and stay godless.